Good evening, everyone. Hope you're having a nice day. And today we're going to go over camera animations and how we can move and animate our camera professionally. In the previous video, we talked about camera basics, different focal lengths, depth of field, and all that. And if you haven't watched that video, you can just click up here and go see it right now. If you have watched that video, welcome back. Nice to see you again, and let's just get started. So I have this nice car here, and this is my camera, and I want it to rotate, to orbit around this car and show it in every possible angle. And the most basic thing that I can do here is just keyframe this, press I, keyframe for location and rotation, and just move and rotate it around and keyframe them and go forward in my timeline. And it would take me ages and it won't even look that nice. Okay, so how can we do this properly? First thing I'm going to do is select my camera and go here to the Constraints tab. And I'm going to add two constraints to my camera. Well, there are a lot of them here, but right now we only need two of them. So first one is this track 2. I'm going to select that, and this track 2 requires a target. So that target, whatever I choose, would be the point that the camera would be looking at. So no matter how I move or rotate my camera, the camera will always face this target. Okay, so what can we choose as a target? Well, you can choose any object in your scene, or you can just add an empty. So right now I have this car, and this has so many parts, and they are all not merged together, and they're not named properly. So I don't know which one is what. And all this is parented to this empty here. And if I show you the empty is right down here on the ground. And the reason for that is when I scale the car, it would scale from bottom up and it won't just go in the ground. So I wouldn't have to move it after that. So that's that. But I can't use any of these as my target. Okay, so I'm going to add an empty of my own to act as the target. So Shift A and empty plane axis. Okay, now I'm going to rename this as camera target and select my camera and go, and you can pick it here. You can click this eyedropper and select it either up here or in the scene, or you can just click here and search for it. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this here, man. And the camera is now pointing this empty right now. So I'm going to select that and press G to move it. And wherever this empty goes, the camera would just follow it. So you can see that up here and you can see it here. So I'm going to put this right here in the middle of my car, and let's move it better somewhere like that. You can do it more precisely. I'm just doing it the fast and dirty way. Okay, so now if I select my camera and press G to move it, however my camera moves, and wherever I put my camera, it would always be pointing to that empty. Okay, so this is it for this constraint. I'm going to close that, and I'm going to add another constraint. Under relationship here, I'm going to go to follow path. Okay, so this one requires another target, and the target for that should be a curve. So I'm going to press Shift A and I'm going to add a curve. So under curve here, I'm going to select circle. Note that there is a circle here in the mesh. We don't need that. We can't use that. We want it to be a curve. So I'm going to select this I'm going to bring it up on the z-axis and I'm going to scale it. And let's move it so it would just, the car would be in the center, something like that. Let's bring it up and scale it a little bit more. Now I'm going to again select the camera, and as the target, I'm going to pick this Bezier circle. And now the camera jumped all the way back here. And the reason for that is that the location of my camera in the beginning wasn't set to 0. So if I press Alt G to reset the location, the camera would just jump right back here. And now the camera is facing up, and it's because this track 2 is above the follow path. So I'm going to bring it down, and now the camera would face the right direction. Now let's go over this follow path. So we have an offset here, and this offset value sets where on this curve my camera is going to sit. So if I change the value, the camera would just move along this path. And now the value is just going higher and higher. There's no limit to this, and it can go the negative values. So if we don't want that, I can just check this box here, fixed position. And now this, if this is unchecked, this would be offset. If I check this, this would be offset factor. So now this goes between 0 and 1. So there's no negative values, and it can't go higher than 1. So right now I can just make a full rotation around that circle by this. Now if I disable my track 2, there is this option here for follow curve. So right now the camera is facing this direction. If I check that, the camera would rotate and face the curve, and it would just, the rotation of the camera would just follow this curve, and the camera would always face the direction it's moving along the curve. But we don't want that right now, so I'm going to uncheck that and enable my track 2 back on. Right now I can just animate these. I can animate that at frame 1. I can animate this offset, bring it back, bring it forward to 180 for example, put this to 1 and set another keyframe. And now the camera would always face my car here, the empty that I chose for it, and it does a full rotation around the car along this path that I made for it. Okay, now that empty that we created as the camera target that the camera is tracking to, we can also use that here in the where's my camera? Here as the depth of field. So I can select this, and this would be my focus object also, and I can move that around so the camera would always focus on that point and be facing that point. And for this follow path, we don't necessarily need to use a circle, so I'm going to delete all these keyframes, and I'm also going to delete this circle that we made. The camera would jump right in the center because we reset the location, but we're going to fix it in just a second. So I'm going to go to my top view, and I'm going to use another curve. So I'm going to go Shift A, curve, and I'm going to add a Bezier curve. I'm going to press G and move it here so I can see it, and I'm going to press Tab to go to edit mode, press A to select all, and I'm going to delete everything. Okay, now I can go here and pick this draw tool, and I can draw a path of my own however I want it. So I want my camera to start here, move forward, and make a rotation, something like that. I'm doing it with a mouse. It's not that precise or pretty, so you can tweak it the way you want and refine it. So I'm going to just quickly adjust these, and let's bring it closer, and let's make this handle a little bit shorter, and also with this one. So something like that. Again, you can put much more time and effort into this and make it a little bit better. I'm just doing it fast so you can see the result. Now I'm going to go out of edit mode, and let's bring it up a little bit and select our camera, and I want this Bezier curve to be my path. And now my camera is starting here, and if I go forward with this offset factor, it's going to just follow that curve. So I can maybe use a wider lens because it's getting too close, and maybe edit my path a little bit more like that, and back to the camera constraints, and let's see how it, let's keyframe and animate it. So I'm going to go here and go to 1 and animate, keyframe that, and let's see how it looks. Okay, so that's just a very fast way to get an animation like that, and you're not actually keyframing the camera itself and moving it around. You're just using a curve. You can fine-tune your curve the way you want and get a more smooth animation. Now let's just delete that, and I'm going to actually delete this camera, and I'm going to show you a plugin that comes with Blender by default. It's not enabled by default, but you can go here to Preferences, Add-ons, and search for Camera, and this here, Camera, Add Camera Rigs. Okay, so enable that, come here, and if you have autosave enabled by default, that's fine. If you don't, just save Preferences. And now if I press Shift A, I have some options for my camera. So one thing I'm going to show you here quickly is the dolly camera and the crane camera. They're kind of the same, so I'm going to just go with one, this dolly camera. Now when I add that, it adds a camera like this to my scene. Let me move it back here so you can see it better. It adds a camera, and up here, let me go to the camera view. And now this is rigged by default. So if I go to the pose mode, you can press Ctrl Tab to get this menu here, go to pose mode, or you can just select the rig and come up here and select pose mode. And now when I go to the pose mode, I can change these. So we have 4 different rigs here. I'm going to show them quickly. This one is our target, so the track 2 constraint that we added earlier to our camera, this is basically that. So wherever this is, that's where the camera would be facing. Okay, so I can put it right here in the middle of my car, and note that when I move it, the camera is moving with it. Now we have another rig here in the middle, this circle. This can offset the location of your camera, independent from the other rigs. And this one down here is basically the master rig, that the constraint that actually moves everything all together. So if I move this, everything is parented to this and will move with it. Okay, even the target. So the target is now here. But if you want the camera to just face there, you can change the location of your camera with this one here. So I can just move this right there, press G and X like any other object that you want to move, and I can move it along the X axis. And yeah, this is what I can get. So this is a dolly camera, and it's mimicking kind of a professional dolly track. So I can just put my target there, and I can, if I want to animate this, I can move it. Let's press G and X, move it here, and press A to select everything in the rig, and add a location and rotation keyframe by pressing I. Bring it forward and select that one again, G and X, and move it like that. You can move it in any direction you want. You can move it anywhere you want. You can move it up here, something like that. And again, select everything and add another keyframe, and let's see how that goes. Okay, so that animates your camera. That gives you a very nice, smooth, and professional looking camera movement for your scenes or products or whatever you're trying to show. All right. Now you can just play around with different paths. You can just use different rigs. Oh, let me go out of pose mode to object mode. You can just play around with different camera rigs here, like this crane camera. You can just add different paths and constraints and just play around with them and see what works best for you. So this is it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a like down below if it was useful for you, and leave a comment if you have any suggestions for future videos. I would love to hear from you, and I would see you in the next video.